Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you listen. It's the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast. And we only have 2/3 of the tripod today, but we're still managing to go. We got the mad scientist self, Jamal, Madman Magdy, live from the East Coast, DC, aka Chocolate City. You're semi-chocolate. I'll give you some chocolate. You're like semi-sweet chocolate. Can I give you that? You got some pigment
I
to your
love it.
skin.
I'll take whatever I can get, Coach. It's like the original Facebook. You remember the original Facebook relationship status where it was single, committed. It's
It's
complicated.
complicated.
Whatever I can get. So I'm in the whatever I can get category.
There you go. There you go. Live from Chocolate City. It is 11:18 out there. But we're getting it done. We're here for you guys. How are you doing, Jamal?
Doing well, Coach. Thank you for your incredible patience this evening. In Washington D.C. here with the family a bit. So with that 3-hour time difference, things get thrown out. But so excited to be here with you, Coach, and talking Trojan ball. I mean, what better thing is there to talk about?
Nothing.
I'm
Nothing
glad.
at
Very
all.
succinct answer, Coach. Yeah, that's spot on.
We always say, and I know people. I think I mentioned it on here before. But we always talk about LA only has 5 teams or whatever, and it's the Dodgers, the Lakers, the Rams, Galaxy, and USC, and the Kings.
Well, the Galaxy in there.
Galaxy were here first. Galaxy's LA's original team. You know what I mean? And so we always talk about this. So there's nothing better. Right, we got a guy spending all his money on building a stadium, hoping to bring a championship, and it's not going to bring anything. So it's just a waste of money.
Stadium, but he doesn't have any stars to play. Hey, Kawhi Leonard's knee is Swiss cheese. Playoff P is way off P, and we got my man Russell Westbrook is. It seems like he's ready to take off, and James Harden. Well, you can't rely on him for anything when it matters. So, nevertheless, Coach, we digress.
Yeah, there you go. And don't forget, we don't have any banners, so sing your high school jersey so we hang it up on the wall. Don't forget about that one. Mm-hmm. So definitely, I want to swing into this. We're gonna talk NIL a little bit. So I want to kind of segue into NIL. Brian Kelly, came out today and said he's not about the transfer portal and he's not about buying players. Right? That's a bold statement to say in this era. That's pretty much saying we're doing it the old school way. We're going to cut up film with scissors and glue while everybody else is using computers, right? That's the comparison I made. It also kind of makes me feel good going into Labor Day weekend. You know what I mean? Catching up. NIL is what it is. We knew this day was coming once California released the law. We knew this day was coming, and all the other states following. Finally, the NCAA was like, forget it. You guys just do it. And I've talked about all the time. I don't like the way the NCAA's done it because they didn't cap it, right? It's kind of like AI is coming, right? But how is it coming and what is it going to do? So it's here. We're seeing what it's going to do. I don't think it's a very good idea. You have to pay players. Pay to play is in. You have to do it. That leaning into our Trojans. I will say this. I was impressed by that dinner that they put on. Very impressed by that dinner that they put on. House of Victory put on a dinner. And the who's who of USC athletics was at that dinner. Ran by Jen Cohen. She's starting to maybe show she's about her word. You have the price for each seat. How much was each seat?
It was $12.50.
$12.50 a seat. You know what, Jamal? If I would have got an invitation, I would have paid to go to that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I would have paid to go to that because we know what it's going for. The question still is, and I'll lead it off. The question still is, what is USC doing for NIL? And I'm going to stop asking that question. And this is the reason why. USC is one of those particular schools that does not have to report their financials publicly. So I think USC is playing that game. You're never going to know what they're doing with NIL, but we'll show you when we need to. I'll give the example, Bear Alexander. 24 hours, we got the situation resolved. I think a lot of people worry because you see the big D tackle that went to Oregon, and I think that was a different situation. I think they're looking for players who are committed to the team and not chasing the bag at this point in time. My opinion, that's what I think. But as far as USC's NIL, I think they're loaded in NIL, or not. They might not be loaded yet, but they're getting to the point to where people are starting to buy in and starting to donate to NIL, and they're going to be loaded in NIL. But we will never, ever know because they don't have to tell us because they're not a public institution. I think we could kind of back off of the worries of NIL because of that reason. With that, I will pass it to you. What do you think, Matt?
No, Coach, I mean, it's a great point. And I want to start by agreeing with you on a number of things. I think number one, yes, I think the event a couple of weeks ago was very impressive because for no other reason, obviously it was sort of star-studded and packed, but it is now shown that the USC NIL has been sort of consolidated and aligned around House of Victory. Remember,
Yes.
3 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 15 months ago, all of these different collectives, nobody was talking to each other. Nobody was very coordinated. Now it's abundantly clear that House of Victory is the preeminent collective at USC. So, number one, I think just that alignment helps a great deal. Number two, I agree with you. Obviously, USC does not have to disclose, their financials, given that they're a private institution. So you never know whether they're going to be struggling, they're going to be doing great. What you're just going to be seeing is how many players they can get, what's the quality of those players, and then what the productivity is going to be on the field. So I completely agree with you that the lack of transparency by design is there, I think, as a strategic advantage. Number three, I think the linchpin to this conversation is a lot of what Brian Kelly said in terms of, hey, we want to develop you. There are opportunities in Baton Rouge, but look at our track record of taking guys to the NFL. Look, we just had the Heisman Trophy winner. We just had Malik Neighbors. We've had this history of great wide receivers, great defensive linemen in the NFL. If you're just chasing a bag, maybe this isn't for you, but if you want to get developed, this is a place to come to. Very similar, actually, to what Lincoln Riley is saying at USC. Now, here's, Coach, where I have a little bit of a different point of view. I think right now, USC, from an NIL perspective, look, we're in an uncapped sport, to your point. Totally agree. So what is the greatest comparison to college football today? It's Major League Baseball.
I was about to say baseball. Yeah, baseball.
Now, if I were to diagnose USC from afar today, I would say they're not the Yankees. They're not the Red Sox. They're not the Dodgers. They're not the Cubs. They're not the ultimate big market teams. They are more of a middle market team. I think they're the St. Louis Cardinals. They're the Houston Astros. There are teams that they can win, the Chicago White Sox, teams that they can win it all, but you have to be very mindful of how you go and deploy your resources. It's not carte blanche the way it is at Ohio State or Oregon or Texas or Georgia. You have fewer resources than those schools, so you have to be really intentional about how you use them. And if you're going to use them, you want to ensure that you're using them on players that want to stay. Now, here is the challenge. And this is where I think both Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley are going to really be facing a significant challenge. And Coach, I'm going to break this down mathematically for you in terms of expected value. You remember the old probability class of expected value, right? Mm-hmm. Where the probability of some outcome times the payoff, right? So whether you're going to Vegas at the blackjack table or whether you're going and betting on sports or you're doing anything, expected value, probability of the outcome and the payoff of the outcome. Now,
you got to use the best example, Jamal. We just had the Kentucky Derby.
Expected value. There you go. Exactly. So now if we take this expected value concept, Coach, and we apply it to prospects looking at the NFL, right? So let's look at this. How many teams are there in college football? 134 teams in Division I, about 80 players. Sometimes you go to 100. I'm not counting the walk-ons. 134 times 80. So you're looking at about over 10,000 players, okay, every year in Division I football. How many guys get drafted every year? 259, okay? Some guys don't get drafted, undrafted make it. Some guys that get drafted don't make the rosters, but roughly it's 259 out of over 10,000. What is the probability of a college player in any 1 year making it to the NFL, it's 2.5%. Now, what is the expected payoff of making the NFL? Bleacher Report had a study last year that said average NFL earnings. Okay, so take away the Mahomes and the Burrows. Those guys are kind of the extreme cases. Average NFL earnings is $10.5 million. So what is my expected value, Coach, as a Division I prospect to make the NFL? It's 2.5% times $10.5 million. That's about $260,000. That is my expected value in terms of making it to the NFL. So when someone is coming to me and offering me a bag of $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, the math says I got to take it. The chances of me making that in the NFL, given the probability and given the expected outcomes, doesn't close. Now, even if you argue somebody like Lincoln Riley, because he's such an offensive genius, okay, probability of making to the NFL from 2.5% goes to 3%. Or Eric Henderson, because he's so good with the defensive line, probability of being a great interior defensive lineman or an edge rusher goes from 2.5% to 3%. And those are huge compliments we're giving them, Coach. I mean, 0.5%.
0.5% is a lot. That's a lot.
For one coach, that's a massive compliment we're giving them. Probably the greatest compliment we've given both of those guys on the history of this show. But even that 0.5% bump is an extra $50,000. And the expected payout then becomes $300,000. So unfortunately, Coach, this idea of, hey, we're only going to develop guys versus the guys that are chasing the bag, right now, the math doesn't check out, because any financial advisor, any rational guardian, parent, anyone who's sort of giving credible advice is going to say, go take the bag. And oh, by the way, it's not like you go to an Oregon and you're not going to get developed, or you go to a Georgia and you're not going to get developed. So this idea that come here for less money because you're going to get developed versus going somewhere else for the bag. I mean, it's the same situation, Coach. If you got offered today $500,000 or $1 million to change jobs, okay, I'm not saying you're not going to get paid. You're going to get paid kind of the same amount, or 80 or 90% what you're getting paid right now, and you get $1 million. Are you going to say, hey, no, madman, I like the culture here. I like who I'm working with here. You're going to go and take the bag, and you're going to go to the next job. And so now we're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, and we're saying, no, stay for the championship, stay for the development, when the reality is the chances of them making this caliber of money is very, very slim in any other phase of their football career. So that is the challenge that USC is going to be facing, that LSU is going to be facing, that all of these mid-market teams are going to be facing, Coach. So this is a brave new world out there. How USC has to navigate that is they have to ensure that the guys that they're investing in buy in and want to stay. And those guys are few and far between. And for all the folks that are kind of sad right now, stressed a little bit about not getting another defensive lineman, you know who we actually have to blame for that, Coach? Bear Alexander. Because the fact that Bear Alexander needed a second bag to be retained, guess what? That bag could have gone to somebody else for the depth. So this idea that, hey, they're only getting guys and Bear's here because he wants to be here, that's a little fuzzy. Because if Bear really wanted to be here for Coach Henderson and Coach Riley and all of these guys, he wouldn't have needed the second bag. And if he doesn't need the second bag, now you have the bag to go get somebody else. So this is a mid-market team right now, Coach. So it's not like they can't win, but they are going to get outspent in certain situations. So they have to be really mindful with their resources. So yes, I agree with you. It's not dire, but they're not the Yankees and the Red Sox either. They're somewhere in between. And I think they have to figure out how to navigate. And here's the other piece here, Coach. Being a middle of the market team only lasts for so long with these coaches. Look at a Brian Kelly. Why did he leave Notre Dame to go to LSU? He felt like there was a certain type of player he just couldn't get ultimately at Notre Dame, given the academics. There was a limit. He got to the playoff. He got his doors blown off. He was like, for me to reach my total potential, I need parity. So he went to a place like LSU. Look at Lincoln Riley, even. He was at OU, was not getting over the hump. I think he was not happy about the fact that OU was going to go to the SEC. He had a clear path to the playoff with the Big 12. Now he jumps. And remember what he said. to Antonio Morales of the Athletic coach 6 months ago, where he said, look, I am going to be the head coach of USC. I want to be here for the long term on the condition that the university provides the resources necessary for me to compete. So they're going to be middle of the market teams, both USC and LSU, to your point. But these coaches, they want to get to a place where they have the greatest opportunity to win. So Riley's going to give this a shot for another year or two. And if he feels like he can't get the guys and can't get the depth, this idea that he's going to stay forever, I think is going to be really challenged, and he may go elsewhere. But this is why I keep going back to the point, Coach. There's a margin of error here. There's a margin. There's a window where USC has to become great again in football. And I think that margin is 2 years, this year and next year. And if it can't happen, I think there's going to be some real structural challenges moving forward.
So a couple of things I want to rebuttal back on, and that's one of the reasons why when it's just us two talking, we could talk on these things, and I just love everything you said about it, and you bring up valid points. One rebuttal I would have is I think, and I don't have any hard evidence which doesn't hold up against you. You're like my friend Ryan, like you have to have factual evidence or it has to make sense or you'll just kill it. So I do think the offensive linemen or the defensive linemen who came, got the money, and left kind of put SC in shell shock because they don't want to do that again. And then in Bears' defense, and I don't know how much weight this holds, I think outside pressures caused him to go get more money, which I don't think that's fair to Bear, but he had to do what he had to do because he's taking care of other people at such a young age. And I hate that. I know we talk about that all the time, which probably also put him in strain right now. Because I will say this, and you say this all the time, right? If I'm SC has $7 billion donors right now, at the drop of the hat, if we really needed it, hey, the Coliseum, we can't play in the Coliseum because it's deemed inhabitable. They're going to red flag it, right? We need to fix it. We'll get those $7 billion donors to donate as much as we need right now to get the Coliseum fixed. No problem, right? Compared to Oregon and Phil Knight is an open checkbook. SC's donors are more like, I need to see it. I need to know what ROI is going to. Oh, I get my name on the building? Okay, for sure. Here's the money you need. I think we did make a step forward with that House of Victory dinner. I will say that. I think that is a big step forward. But I still think that those big donors are like, I'm not sure yet. What is this really, really going to? If we still had Galen, I don't think NIL will be an issue. Galen was that open book. You know what I mean? But Galen's kids are in charge of the money now, and it's like it's not the same thing. So Galen was that open book. You were there every halftime. Oh, Galen wrote another check. Like that was the open book. I also want to say I don't think you could compare Lincoln Riley to Brian Kelly. And this is why I say that. If Lincoln Riley had an open book like Phil Knight, which I understand you say that's what Lincoln Riley wants, and those are the sources he needs, and he has to. If you don't give that to him in 2 years, SC fans are going to be mad that Lincoln Riley left. So I'm going to address that right now. If Lincoln Riley had the bidding money, I think Lincoln Riley would be more aggressive in bidding, right? My worry as a Trojan with some old school Trojan in it is that we start getting these players just to bid war and buy championships, and we lose that culture. I think there's a small glimpse in him where, all right, we really want this guy. We talk to him. We like him. Let's get into a bidding war for him, and let's get him because he's going to stay here for his entirety. If he asks for a bump, we'll give him the bump because he deserved that bump, but in his heart, he's a Trojan. I get that. Brian Kelly is not going to change at all. You get what I'm saying? Lincoln Riley at least has the will to pay players, but I think Lincoln Riley is a little shell-shocked because the pocketbooks aren't all the way open, which he also in 2 years needs to show, hey, we need to open these pocketbooks if we want to show some success and we want to keep moving forward, right? So those are my comebacks for what you said to that.
No, Coach, I'm with you, and I think totally agree there. And again, I don't blame Bear in any way, shape, or form.
I know.
Situation in that, I mean, it's an unenviable situation. He did what was best for his family, and you have to commend him for that. I think the challenge, though, is that even a guy like Bear who feels like, you got him and he's committed, you do have these external factors that you have to take into consideration. And sometimes you got to pay a guy twice. And when you do have that limited checkbook, it becomes a challenge. And the other thing, Coach, I will say, House of Victory event was absolutely phenomenal at $12.50 a plate. UCLA had a similar dinner 6 months ago at $1,000 a plate. And so it's not like, and there's a chasm between USC football and UCLA football. So all I'm saying is it was a great event. But if a school like UCLA, a program like UCLA can have the same type of event at $1,000 a plate, look at what we're really dealing with over here. I mean, what's the dollar per plate at Oregon? 10,000, 15,000. So again, it's not that they have unlimited checkbook, and it's kind of a weird place to be, right? Historically, we always think of USC as this incredibly wealthy school that checkbook is really not an issue. So it's a weird place to be, that the crown jewel sport, USC does not have gymnastics. USC does not have softball. USC does not have a lot of sports because they want to consolidate and really focus on football. And even still, the challenge is with the checkbook with some of these other entities that are out there and these comparable programs. So again, it just means you have to be a lot more mindful. You have to be a lot more strategic in who you're recruiting. And you have to be sure that you pay them once and they want to be here for the long haul. I think that's just going to become more and more challenging down the line. You have to get more and more strategic.
If you only have to play him once, SC is never going to succeed in this game.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And right. I'll give you this example. I come in as a freshman. Oh, and just to clear it up, if I got offered $500,000 for a new position, I'm not even giving a 2-week notice, and I'm starting the next day. I'm just letting you know.
That's the thing, right, Coach? Like, I think we have to sort of be real a little bit here, right? If for us, it's a no-brainer. How can we expect 18 to 22-year-old kids to say, no, don't take the bag, come here, and, we got the culture and the championships and all of that stuff. Guess what? After the age of 22, the championships and the culture don't pay the bills. They don't set you up in terms of your life, right? And so we have to sort of separate the idealism from the realism, right? I mean, the idealism is, this is a USC show, but the idealism is some sort of Notre Dame thinking, right? Where it's like Rudy, win one for the Gipper, and we're Rudy, and we're here because of Notre Dame. And the reality is, it's not really Notre Dame thinking, it's Miami thinking, right? It's not win one for the Gipper, Coach. It's win one for the stripper. I mean, that's the world that we're in right now. Okay, this is 1980s University of Miami. And so I saw some things that USCJ posted where he was like, Lincoln and Coach Henderson, they're kind of doing their thing, but this is a whole different world. And I completely agree with USCJ. And I think that's kind of what we're sharing here, kind of mathematically and logically. I see us having some conversations where sometimes it's just a little too idealistic. This isn't Rudy and Notre Dame. This is 1980s University of Miami, and we have to kind of be honest about that. The culture and the championships is only going to sell you so far when you see a high school teammate, you see a colleague with 7 figures in the bank account. Okay, yeah, I want to pack, now not a Pac-12, a Big Ten championship. I even won a national championship. Is that going to get me paid? Is that going to set up my life after the age of 22? It's sad, but we really are at a place of the professionalization of college football. So a lot of the things like the pageantry and the education and all of these things, even the way we're selling Los Angeles, Coach, and saying, come to Los Angeles, come to USC for all of the opportunities, all very true. But let's be honest, outside of Caleb Williams, outside of Jordan Addison, how many guys got $500,000, $1 million plus endorsement deals? I mean, you either have to be the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback or you got to be the Biletnikoff winner. So even coming to LA, there's no guarantee. It's not like these deals are falling on trees in Los Angeles. So all of these selling points, pageantry, LA, university, culture, championships, all very credible things. But we got to be honest about how much of a knob these things really are. In the end, we're all playing the green game here now. Unfortunately, it's not sustainable, but this is the world that we're in.
So to clear it up, and I wanted to go back, you may have to pay a kid twice. And I'll use me for an example, right? So say I come in, I get recruited, and they say, look, we'll give you $50,000 to come. And I'm just giving round numbers, right? I come in, I redshirt, and all of a sudden my redshirt sophomore year, I'm on the Thorpe Award list. I'm a dude. You know, I'm starting to become my jerseys in the bookstore. I think I'm gonna have to go in and have a talk about money. You know what I mean? Because now my value, and that's the game we are at. My value is a lot better, right? You guys are making money off of me in that bookstore, and people are coming to see me, right? I'm a name. I'm a household name. It's time to start making household numbers. I was good with that 50,000 that first 3 years because I wasn't a household name, and you guys are paying for my education. I'm good. We're calling even. And back then it was about $50,000. We're even. Call it even. Now you're making money off me. It's time to talk numbers, and I need a 6-figure number, right? Like, and I'm not saying be too greedy and like, oh, I need 500,000. Like, it's fine. I need about 150. I need at least 2% off of this revenue share that you guys. Well, it'll be about 10. I need at least 10% off this revenue that you guys are making off me, you know. And so that issue will have to come up and pay twice. I want to clear up the pageantry part, right? Because I did make it seem like it's all about USC. I think I said that now it's because the money is not there and we're a middle market team. You know what I mean? So we have to, and like I said, I think they're a little shell shocked, and you have to make the right decision. I don't know if you saw that show with me and Ryan, but I was like, if he comes, he comes. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Right. It's not the end of our world because he could come, play for a season. Now he's out the door, and we paid him all the money. That's the problem I have with Neil. And that's why I always say you need to cap this for these guys. And a lot of people need to understand there's collective money that can be governed because it comes from the university. Now, if I go and make a commercial and I make any outside money for signing autographs, that's your money and we cannot control that. But that's on you and that's your hustle that you have to do. I'm talking about money from the school needs to eventually be capped because they're playing a game. And these kids are smart. They're playing a game. Like, I'm not happy here. They gave me $650. All right, you guys are giving me $650. I could be closer to home. All right, I'll come on home. I just made almost $1 million. I made $1 million. I made $1.3 million in one calendar year. You know, just from playing this game. So that's why. But now, if you cap it, right, and say juniors only get 125, right? If I go and they need to cut the payments up, I don't know if they give it all out front. I don't know if it's monthly payments, but it needs to go. Well, SC, how much did you guys already pay him? We paid him this much of the 125. All right, this is what's left on your remaining on the 125. You're not coming here to get a whole brand new 125. That's right. Easy to do. That controls the transfer portal because why would I want to leave and I'm going to make the same amount of money, right? Everybody's getting paid. But back to what I was saying, I went off on a tangent. I apologize.
No.
Right now, you have to be a little careful because of the shell shock. Right now, you have to be a little bit careful because the pocketbooks aren't. I was listening to he's on Fox Radio 570 with Fred Rogan. Rodney Peete. I was listening to Rodney Peete. And Rodney Peete was like, well, yeah, we could play him. We could pay him. We could pay him with no problem. But what are we paying for?
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's why USC and when I used to host recruiting visits, all I did was looking downtown LA. Like, you see that skyline? We own that skyline. You don't get rich. You get rich by spending money. But when you spend your money, it's a smart risk that you're willing to take, and you know the outcome of the risk.
Correct.
You can't just ask these people who work their whole life to make billions of dollars to risk their money, and they don't know the outcome. There's no outcome, and they're not going to do it.
$1 million, Fred, for someone who ends up going and playing at Oregon. I mean, I'm just funding my competitors, right?
Right.
But here's the challenge, Coach, and everything you said is spot on. But this is why it's unsustainable is because the incentives are misaligned, right? You said, what am I paying for, right? Mm-hmm. If you have another, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case this year, but let's say you have another 8-5, okay? And Lincoln's seat gets really, really warm. Mm-hmm. And that conversation happens next offseason where you say, you know what? We got to pay this kid $1 million. And frankly, Fred, I think not knowing the exact specifics, I think it's a lump sum. I have a hard time believing it's sort of a monthly payment because then you get into sort of a weird place of like injuries or whatnot. And then is it guaranteed money just like it would be kind of in an NFL contract? So you have to believe it's a lump sum. But here then becomes the question is, it's $1 million. I know the guy's going to leave after a year, but I also know if we have him, my 8-win season becomes a 10-win season? Are you willing to pay that tax?
No.
If you have another 8-5, and then another 8-5 becomes another 9-4, and you start getting into a world of mediocrity, are you desperate enough to then say, you know what? I know the guy's not going to be here more than a year, but he is such a needle mover that I don't care. And I think that's the question that's really the unanswered question. And I think that's what's going to kind of determine who stays on this ride and who doesn't.
Well, this is also the other issue you have to come to, right? They go 8-5 again, right? And now it's like, well, Jamal, this guy's talking about leaving, but I'm guaranteed 2 more wins with this guy. Can we get another $1 million out of you?
Right.
We had this conversation last year, and we have the same record, right? Like, that's why Miami has that. Everybody thought Miami was just going to take off. These people don't make this much money by just throwing money away. What you see rappers do is not the reality of these business people who are in this top 1% of the world. And Miami's unfortunately one of the schools that have a bunch of top 1%ers. USC is a school that has a bunch of top 1%ers. Of course, the Ivy League has a bunch of top. And Stanford, top 1%ers, right? In reality, the Ivy League should be killing the NIL game.
Yeah. I mean, you said this, Coach. Look, the reality is, if Stanford wanted to play football, like if Stanford was serious about football, they would win every national championship the next 10 years. Let's just be really clear. Stanford's endowment is so ridiculous. They could buy USC and still be the second richest school in America. I mean, that's the kind of endowment we're talking about. But coaches, it's a really interesting point, right? This is the thing. When what we're seeing in the South, what we're seeing in the SEC, what we're seeing in Texas, what we're seeing in Oregon is me paying into the football program is actually giving me access to other donors that are giving into the football program. I get visibility into them to do business with them. It's kind of like if I own a bunch of restaurant chains and I'm paying I'm a big donor for the football program. Other people then are saying, man, he's such a great donor for the football program. We're going to go support his restaurant chains. Or he's a real estate guy. Because he's given so much to Georgia, we got to go stay at his hotels or really use his real estate. They're using it as an investment vehicle to actually grow their wealth. They're not.
And that doesn't work out here.
They love the football team. And because it is so culturally dialed up football in the South and in places like Texas, and because Phil Knight has sort of created this culture with Nike, you start getting this sort of investor ecosystem. I don't know if that investor ecosystem is that way with USC right now. They're purely giving it because they love the football program, but that only takes you so far, Fred, to your point of it actually being a worthwhile investment. And that's where USC, I think, has hit the wall of being a middle of the market team. So that's, again, all to say they're going to have to do more with less, in air quotes, less being than a number like in Ohio State or in Oregon, et cetera.
So let me ask you this. And the ecosystem, and the reason why I won't work for the ecosystem is because, let's be realistic. The realtor that's donating at USC, I can't go get that realtor. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you donate for USC. I played at USC. I want to go look for a house. Okay, well, I have a house in Bel Air. Nope, I can't live in Bel Air. You know what I mean? Like, here's my budget. You know what I'm saying? Like, but so you can't create that ecosystem compared to like Alabama, right? Even though that realtor could go get $1 million home for somebody, they could also go and get $850,000 home, $550,000, $400,000 because of the small network. Yes. And same thing with Eugene.
And just the cost of real estate, and just there's a lot of things at play there.
Right. And so that's the thing. So let me ask you this question, and maybe you will have the answer to it, and maybe you don't. What would make the big donors, right? And like I said, we don't have Galen anymore. If Galen was here, we wouldn't have this problem, right? We could always go run to Galen. I don't know what he loved about USC athletics, but we could always go run to Galen, and Galen will fix everything. Hey, Galen, we need
the fact that Galen gave a stadium in the middle of Pete's Run. And they built a stadium in the middle of Pete's Run. That tells you everything you need to know.
I was just about to say that.
Was a non-starter in the 2000s. Yes, there was the Elite Eight run in 01, and yes, there was a blip with with DeRozan and OJ Mayo, but you're talking about the Pete era. This is the preeminent era of USC football the last 45 years. Last half century, and basketball got a stadium amidst all of that. So that's really all you need to know about Galen.
And meanwhile, we were struggling to get new facilities to try to keep up because that was during the facilities race, right? And so, my question is, what would make the donors open up their pockets for NIL, right? Because their pocket, let's just say their pocketbooks like this, right? You know, they're like, all right, here's a little bit, but how do we get them to open up the pocketbook? What would make those big donors open up the pocketbooks? Because this is the thing too. Everybody's gonna say you have so many pro athletes. Pro athletes aren't billionaires. We want the billionaires. How do we have 7 Phil Knights? How do we get those 7 Phil Knights to open up their pocketbooks like Galen used to do and give all in the NIL?
Coach, it's a great question. I wish I had the answer for you right here and now, but I think it starts with a passion for football. And if they get to a place where if USC football falls below a certain standard or becomes below average for some reason, and they get really frustrated to see that, like if we ended up going back to a world of the 90s, you know, I know this is sort of a, you know, it's incomprehensible to, you know, Trojan fans who are under the age of 30. But in the 90s, UCLA beat USC 8 years in a row in football. There was no question who the better football team in Los Angeles was in the 90s. I mean, it's incredible to even say those words, given what happened with Pete then and moving forward. But it would kind of need to take something like that, Coach, not necessarily losing to UCLA year over year, but there would have to be some element where they fell below a certain standard, where it started frustrating these donors, where they said, you know what, we're not really football fans necessarily in the way a Phil Knight is or somebody else is, but we just can't see our university like this. And I think if a lack of production in football starts impacting other things, if it starts impacting
enrollment,
or it starts impacting just kind of the alumni engagement and, you know, the famed Trojan family, right? The alumni network starts kind of impacting the level of engagement there. I'm not saying it will or it won't. I'm just saying if it does, I think it would take those types of things to happen for then folks to say, you know what, be damned. We got to get this thing back to being USC again, because we need the university enrollment to be a certain way. We need the prestige and the brand to be a certain way. We need the alumni network to be a certain way. And really the key to all of that is football success. That's what makes USC USC. It would need to take that kind of chain of reasoning and then that conclusion in my mind.
That's too late. I mean, in reality, that's too late. By the time you do that, it's like that would take almost 10 years.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And by the time you do that, there'll be so many rule changes, so many people way ahead in NIL, so many collectors and things like that. That's way too late. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that's not what you're saying. That's but like that's way too late. That'll be it. You might as well call the program done. You might as well put it in the conference with Oregon State and Washington State, because
and short of that, Coach, I think the other thing is you gotta, maybe it's not the NFL players they're not billionaires, but you bring 20 of them together and now it feels like they're a billionaire, right? So I think a lot of it also, the other element is the NFL players, the great USC players in the NFL. Think of an Amon-Ra St. Brown now getting paid $120 million. You know, USC was such a huge piece of the puzzle in terms of his development. Other players like that, you know, you talk about Pittman and you talk about the other guys. Let's see what happens with Caleb. There could be a real opportunity here with the big money if he balls out in his rookie contract. You know, you're talking about $300, $400, $500 million. Does he bring people together and fuel the football program? So I think there's twofold. You need kind of the billionaires to kind of get engaged who maybe not love football, but that, to your point, takes a more extreme thing to happen. And if that extreme thing happens, maybe you can't come back. It's like quicksand. Or the more safe approach is really leveraging now all of these Trojans in the NFL. We talk about it all the time, like Trojans, right? I mean, that's a hashtag on Twitter, leveraging them to come together to help fund the future of the football program.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you a question. It completely slipped my mind when I was thinking about it. That's unfortunate. It was a good one too. Dang it.
That's all. Well, it's like my uncle says, Coach. There's always you always want to leave a little bit for next time. So
I
that's
guess so.
just the art of
That that
showmanship.
that was it, it was unfortunate because it was don't remember what it was about. I'm so sorry about that, Jamal.
No worries, bro. No worries. No
I'm
worries.
so sorry about that.
Obviously, we're down a bearded bandit tonight, but it's been
Yeah,
fun to sort of go. You and me tonight has been. It's always a pleasure.
it's always good to go. It's always good to go. And like you're up late. Or have you adjusted? Are you still on California time or are you
I'm
on
still on California time now. I'll probably be on Washington D.C. time by Saturday, which is the time to come back home. So that's the you always sort of get adjusted, and
Yeah.
then it's time to come back. As they say, it actually takes one day for your body to recover actually physiologically for every 1 hour of time difference. So even if you go to the East Coast, it's about 3 days it'll take you to adjust.
Really?
Yep.
Oh. So you're staying up later because it's the 3 hours.
Right.
I got you. I got you. That makes sense. Definitely. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I hope the weather's nice. Maybe you can go check out a Nationals game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, maybe dig in and say, hey, listen, how are you guys going to go from middle of the market to big market, and can we take some notes for USC football?
No, the Metros, the Expos weren't even big markets, so
Yeah.
I don't even think that one's possible. And I mean, if it gets there, oh, that's what I was going to say. So we kind of teetered with it, and I don't know if it's true or not. Revenue sharing is starting to float around a little bit for
Yep.
these, and Ole Miss does it already. And I don't know why USC doesn't do it because they normally lead the forefront with this. I know Ole Miss gives some revenue for their sports, but they give it to every scholarship athlete in the program.
Right.
And when I say the program, the athletic program.
Yep.
Here's the issue with revenue sharing with USC if this thing does happen, right? It's floating around. I don't know how serious they are about it, but here's the issue. LA has the flakiest fans. I don't know. I shouldn't say the flake. Between them and Florida, it's 1 and 2, right? Because there's so much, and we talk about it all the time. Like in September, you could go to a Dodgers game, a Rams game, a Chargers game, a Trojans game, and a Bruins game. Right? You could accomplish that. Even put it like this: even if the Rams or Chargers play on Thursday, from Thursday to Sunday, you could hit each one of those games, right? You could go a Chargers game on Thursday, a Dodgers game on Friday. You could go to a USC or UCLA game, and then you go to a Rams game. There's so much to do. Let's add concerts, and we had this talk before, right? Let's add concerts to all the arenas you can have concerts in. We can't even name them all, right? That you within a 20-mile radius. When you really think about all the concert venues are within the 20-mile radius. And then you add in the beach and the hiking and those types of things. If you're not winning, they're not going to come, right? And the Dodgers witnessed that this year. They had a very slow start. All of a sudden, it was like, well, we're only getting 30,000 people, which is a lot for baseball, but that's not a lot for Dodger Stadium. Now they caught fire. Now they're getting 50,000 people again. You don't win, they don't come.
Right. Revenue
share teeters compared to Texas, Ohio State, right? They're getting the same revenue share every year because as long as I'm from Ohio, I'm going to be a Buckeye fan. There are no true, how do I say this the right way? The only true Trojan fans, and people are going to hate me for this, but this is the best way to put it. The only true Trojan fans are the people who have actually taken a class at USC. And that's the best way I can say it. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's the reality.
Saying if you're not an alum, get off the damn train. That's what the coaches say.
And it's a broad statement. It's a general statement. It's not for every single person. But the way I'm saying it in this broad general way is because the people out there, right? The small the population of Los Angeles and the true, right? The metro Los Angeles population. Yeah. But I have to explain it to our listeners, right? Like the metro population of Los Angeles is 9 million people. Let's say the diehard Trojan fans, there's only 20,000 of those people, right? Well, there's 80,000 seats at USC.
Right.
And the students only take up a section that only fills up about 1,200 people, maybe 2,000 people, right? Now we're short.
Right.
If you're not winning, the rest of the stadium is not getting filled up. That's what I'm saying, right? So how do you fill it up? How do you keep it filled up?
It's the volatility of the revenue, and so then rev share becomes challenging. Now, the one thing, Coach, I will say is obviously tickets and concessions and all of that is a fraction of revenue. The big revenue, of course, is the TV money, and that's motivation for going to the Big Ten, right? And I think we are headed to revenue share. I think we're headed to a world where the student athletes are going to become just essentially employers of the university. And I think that will eliminate the collective structure. So instead of giving money to House of Victory, you're just going to give money directly to the athletic department and earmark it for football and say, this is what I want to give to football on an annual basis. And so depending on what you make as an athletic department, that revenue share plus this additional earmarked money is what it's going to be. So to me, we're headed to a world of the professionalization of college sports. So now it's really going to become even more about the money. And it's going to be even more about things like free agency and taking the best possible approach for a strong financial outcome. And I think it's going to dial down the pageantry. I think it's going to dial down the characteristics of the university in a really sad way, actually, because I think the things that made my USC experience so great, Coach, is the fact I was a non-athlete. I mean, I'm a nerdy engineer, Indian American who's went to Viterbi. But the fact that a great athlete like yourself who was on the team, you and I had very similar experiences, right? We talk about that. We ate at the same dining hall.
Yeah.
We took classes at the same places. We went to the same, the parties were in the same place. We were still students together, and that's what kind of created that connection. When now you get to a world where you're literally bringing guys on to be employees of your football program, that's a very different now relationship. Now, even those donors that we talked about earlier, the reason they have the nostalgia for the football program is because those players shared my experience. Now, if those players don't share my experience anymore, even though they've got the USC logo on their helmet and they're wearing the colors on their jersey, is my connection the same? And if my connection isn't the same, is my checkbook going to be the same? And so we're just getting into a very interesting world here, Coach, where the professionalization of college sports, it's straight cash, homie, in the words of Randy Moss. And those words are going to be ringing more and more true moving forward. And if you're not at the highest end of the spend, are we getting to a world where you're basically paying for championships every year?
Hopefully it's not knee jerk, right? And they knee jerk the NIL. Hopefully it's not knee jerk. Now, I will tell you this. If they do make college athletes employees, right, the California schools will be the best schools. California schools, Florida schools, New York schools, and Connecticut schools now become the best schools, and Chicago now become the best schools in the nation. Let me tell you why. I get paid more for being an employee in California than I do for being an employee in Texas. So now you're like, hey, this is how much you make in California. This is how much you make in Texas. Oh, what? I'm going to California. You know what I mean? Right. And for a little bit, that's what was winning. We just had bad coaching, cost of attendance. Cost of attendance was a big thing. It was like, well, this is your check now for cost of attendance. This is cost of attendance elevated.
When all else is equal, to your point, that the labor rate in those states wins out. But then the question is, you got that working for you, but if you don't have the attendance working for you, if you don't have the winning working for you, right, that offsets it in a more negative way. So it's just a really interesting economic discussion. Coach, I thought we were going to have a 20-minute conversation about NIL, and we ended up having a 50-minute conversation on the state of economics and future sports. So this is why I love you, man. I mean, this is why this is so fun.
I apologize.
No, there's nothing to apologize for.
What held us up was I forgot that question. And so definitely. But yeah, let's get out of here. Jamal, it's always been great. Enjoy your time in DC.
Thank you, sir.
Tell your dad congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I still need to meet Papa Magny. He sounds like a great man.
I mean, Papa Magny is excited to meet. I mean, Papa Magny has met Will, and he's like, "Where's Coach, man? Where's Coach?"
I don't think me and Papa Maggie would get along very well.
Always invited to everything. You were invited to gender reveal, you and the fam. So we gotta make it all happen here.
One thing you and the missus is gonna learn is that you're going to get an invitation and you're going to look in your calendar and it's something for the kid that day. Yeah. And it's something you're really going to want to go to.
You're going to start dictating the social life. I mean, that's the thing. That's going to be the biggest adjustment for sure.
Yep, definitely. I appreciate you, Madman. Next week, the next 2 weeks, we got some big stuff clicking.
We got some heavy hitters.
Heavy
hitters. So stay tuned, everybody.
I'm excited. And then we'll be ready to take off. I think we're ready to blast off after this. And the season's coming, so stay tuned. Thank you guys. Appreciate you once again. Thanks, Jamal. You guys know it's the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. You know how it goes. Live free, fight on.